the first thing I want to say, I feel awful for Joseph Asai.
Yeah.
I feel awful for him. I understand that you can't do that. You cannot do that. But he knows that. He knows he can't do that. And I was at the 2014 NFC Championship game in Seattle.
Okay.
That was the game where the Seahawks came back and won.
Oh.
And Brendan Bostic dropped the onside kick that allowed the Seahawks to come back and win. And I will never forget being in that locker room after the game. And the Seahawks, their visiting lockers are huge. They're really big. He had crawled inside his locker. Like he was trying to disappear. The only thing you could see were the tips of his shoes coming out of the locker. He was trying to just go away. And obviously, that shapes his entire career. It shapes the way that people talk about him. It's the first thing that comes up when his name is mentioned. He's talked about this. I mean, it was a life-altering event for him. And I know that in the moment, it's got to be incredibly painful for Bengals fans, for everyone who loves this team. But that's a really, really tough moment, even if it's one that you brought upon yourself.
Right. And considering what he did in their first matchup and other plays,
he played great today.
He played amazing today. Probably the best game of his life today. And you got to think, even though he's not a rookie this year, I believe, he got hurt his first year. That's the biggest game of his life. I mean, that's the biggest moment. Yeah. And I mean, this is like the biggest moment of his life, and it's just emotions, and that it just happens. Like, just stuff happens. That's sports. That's the human element of this game. But on top of it, that's what's, I don't know if it's irony is the right word, but you could have the best game and people remember that negative moment, and it could be the opposite. You could have a terrible game and people remember the highlight that you have at the end of the game. So, but that's sports. And I mean, honestly, you do feel bad for him because that's just, it's a lot of eyeballs. And like you said, that's what people remember your name as until you have another moment that takes that away.
Where do you want to start outside of that final play? I think the other element of talking about that final play is Mahomes even
scrambling,
pulling off that scramble on one foot. Clearly he's hampered the entire second half of the game. I mean, he tries to throw that one throw, moving to his left, coming back to his right, off his right foot. He clearly tweaked it when he did that. He had trouble moving around throughout the entire second half. They're down to 3 receivers on that side. I mean, they were really just trying to get this thing over the finish line the best way that they could, and they ultimately did it.
They did. That's the thing with those injuries is the adrenaline wears off, even though, yes, it's a tense game. It's just your human body like reacting. And then, probably the shots he got wore off as the game went on, and it was cold, but you could see it hampering him. He had a bootleg. I think he had a little flick pass to Sky Moore. And I tweeted this. He looked like Big Ben last year when Big Ben had to do a bootleg where he's just shuffling out there. And it's like, yeah, but that's what happens. It's cold. But the fact that he could scramble and get that play, it was tremendous. I mean, the cat and mouse game we knew would be pretty awesome between the Chiefs offense and the Bengals defense. And there was a lot of cool little twists that these teams were doing. Bengals doing a lot of robber coverage, taking away that stuff over the middle, especially with Kelsey, and then seeing how Andy Reid and the Chiefs staff kind of adapted to that, using Travis Kelsey as a decoy. They ran a play with him on the backside blocking, and 2 Bengals defenders are like, who are supposed to be guarding Kelsey, like, well, what do we do now? Like, they did, like, Logan Wilson's like, well, I guess I got a blitz now. He blitzes late. That was the MVS little sail route, and that went for it was a 3rd and 8. It was right before the fumble where the Mahomes weird play. And I was having a feeling of deja vu that it was right then and there. The Chiefs, again, just like a week 13, driving to maybe go up 2 scores, and then they have another wonky turnover. And I was like, I hear it. This is the Bengals. They hang in there. They do enough twists to make it hard, and they pull out these games. But the Chiefs came out with it. It was just Chris Jones overcame a lot. Chris Jones dominated at times, and that's why you voted for him Defensive Player of the Year. It was just moments like that. No one cranks it up more than Chris Jones, and that's why he is the closer in this league. But it was stars making plays on both sides of the ball. Chase and Higgins, Mahomes, Chris Jones, Burrow. So Burrow had some tremendous scrambles and other throws that he was just throwing on the money as well. But it was just, that's what the playoffs are, is the stars start taking over. And that's what that game felt like, especially in the second half.
Chris Jones, it's 3rd down. The game is on the line, and they put him over the right tackle. He absolutely roasts him, comes up with the sack, but he made a dozen plays in this game. Even at the stat sheet, I think he only had like 6 pressures, which seems low. He was double teamed consistently throughout the game. The final play of this first half, when they were trying to go to Higgins, at the right pylon.
Mhm.
He was double teamed and still blew up the play. Several times when he was left one-on-one, he either got a pressure or got home for a sack. He had at least 2 run stops in the game. I mean,
Yep.
he was the best player on the field, in my
Yeah.
opinion, over the course of the game. And he finishes off with that huge play on that final drive. A final drive that only happens because Andy Reid elects to punt
Right.
on 4th and 8 with like 2 minutes left. And he was getting roasted on Twitter for doing this. I think it was a 99.8th percentile cowardly punt since they started tracking them or whatever.
Index, whatever it is.
And
yeah.
as soon as they hit the 4th down, first of all, very good choice, in my opinion, by Zach Taylor to decline the penalty. The fact that they thought when he initially took it, I was like, have we watched the illegal contacts or the pass interference penalties that have happened in this game?
Like, you do not give Mahomes more plays. It's not yardage. It's plays to Patrick Mahomes. That's the plays you're trying to avoid.
There's no way I'm giving him another one. So they decline it. And it's 4th and 8 from, I believe, what was the 38-yard line? And Reid elects to punt.
Yep.
I get my first thought as soon as they were trying to punt him out there, I was like, why don't you go for this? It's 4th and 8. Like, it's you can't gain that much from a punt. But if you don't get it, it's a tie game and they have to kick a field goal to win it. Typically, I wouldn't think that way. Their offense could not move the ball. Mahomes is totally banged up. They're down to however many receivers that they had. I can understand in that moment just thinking our defense is playing really well. Even if I'm giving Joe Burrow the ball back one more time and I don't want to leave the game in his hands, if we don't get this, we're essentially giving them the ball with 10 yards to go until field goal range. So I didn't love it, but I can understand it in that moment more when you consider some of the contextual elements of the game than what happens in a vacuum, which I don't think a lot of those models are taking into account in that moment.
I think healthy Mahomes, it's a no-brainer. Then now it's like, like that. He saved that scramble for the very last drive.
That was the last thing he had to take.
He was like, oh God, you could see him even on the sideline. He was talking to Matt Nagy and you could tell he's just like, he's like, please make this. I don't know if I have an overtime in me, especially with this weather getting cold. He would, but obviously it's going to be a drag, pun intended. But but with the Bengals, like, and I understand, like, that was the best this Chiefs defense, or I would say in the previous matchups, the Bengals offense would have like a light bulb go off, and that they would figure out, oh, they're doing this against us. Okay. And they started to do that. Hey, we're going to do the split backs with the 7-man protection. Yeah. But I feel like the Chiefs had a counter punches to the counter punches in the second half. And that's like, this was the first time in their 4 matchups in 2 years where I actually felt like the Chiefs defense was kind of, I would say, in control, but like was throwing punches as well.
I think they were dictating that side of the ball more than they have in previous matchups. Absolutely.
Yes, especially in the second half. Like, they've come out in the first half and then the Bengals adjust and then they don't adjust to the adjustment. And I think this game, they were like, oh, okay, this is what you want to do. We're going to do this. And so I think that's what I'm kind of agreeing with you and saying that this was maybe, I don't say I'm agreeing, but it's that this was a time where you would trust the Chiefs defense if they did have to make a stand. Like, this would be the one time I would, as opposed to the 3 previous matchups.
I think I go for it. I did not like
the
decision, but I still, again, I'm trying to go through what he may have been thinking when he made that choice. So
there's a lot of people that don't remember early career Andy Reid, and this was a lot of PTSD flashbacks for a lot of people that watched some of those old Eagles teams in the early 2000s. It was like, here we go again. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
I thought that, talking about guys again that stood out and I think kind of shaped the game, what those receivers did for Cincinnati, I think just a consistent reminder of give your guys a chance to make plays, and when you have those types of guys, they're going to be able to make plays. Like Higgins going up and getting that ball, Chase going up and getting that ball. The play that they called and the design for him to run through that double team in that exact situation, going forward on 4th down. I mean, that was a huge. I think that today was one of the biggest takeaways of the entire game, is that teams were rewarded when they were aggressive. You know, the Bengals have no shot in that game if they decide to punt on that 4th and 6 and not go for it. Going for it gives them a chance. And I think that today was one of those moments where consistently we were reminded that if you are going to push it in those spots, typically it's going to work out for you over long stretches of time. We'll talk about it with the Eagles, but that decision by Cincinnati actually put them in a position to potentially win this game.
Fortune favors the bold. I mean, especially in a game like this. And when your players go make plays, the T. Higgins touchdown where he just picked the ball off, it was like pretty. Wasn't it? Like that
It was
touchdown
a,
was
it was
like,
a court. That
so,
is your ideal version of football. Is
dude,
what
it
that
is.
play looked like. As
Dude,
soon as
a
that
ball
happened, I was
winner.
like, oh my god, ball winning bullshit. Nate
Ball
absolutely
winner,
loves this.
ball out right on time, perfect spot, ball winners. Doesn't even matter if you actually guarded. Like the corner had no chance, even if he did look like it was still no chance on it. But it was just perfect. But that was again, it's that play was the Chiefs had a good answer for what the Bengals wanted to do. So every time that this is how the double move happened on 4th and 6 too. When he was the lone receiver, they were bracketing him. They ran quarters like the whole game. There was a couple blitzes, but it was that bracket quarters that Spags loves the whole game. So when he was the lone receiver, they're double teaming him. Then they're bracketing Irwin in the slot because Boyd went out. They manned up and they kept doing this. They would mug up the linebackers, but they would man cover the running back and the tight end, but they're hug rushing where the Bucks love to do this, where you act like you just stand there at the line of scrimmage, and when he leaks to the flat, you just cover him man coverage. But what they're doing is, hey, you have one-on-one here, true one-on-one. It's to the field and it's only to the outside with a corner playing heavy inside leverage. So really it's go balls, comebacks, and stops. Like that's what you're reduced to on the outside, to the field too. And that's kind of like a players break shit that like good players break your rules. And they, even if you have the perfect call, the hardest coverage for what you want to do, Burrow puts the ball perfectly and Higgins makes a play. And that's why the players matter, even if the scheme is perfect. But I just thought that was awesome. It was a great call defensively. And I thought Spags did an awesome job all game. I love their game plan this whole game with all those quarters coverages. We can talk about that in a sec, but I thought that was a perfect example of, yes, even if you have the perfect call and at the perfect time, good players can still make plays. But when you're reducing them to making those plays, that's not a bad thing for the defense. That's a long rambling way for a good call, good play.
I thought there were a couple individual guys on the KC defense that came up in big moments as well. I mean, that Brian Cook tip on the interception, they try to go to the exact same play to T. Higgins on the other side, and he responds. He obviously plays it better than he did the first time with Chase, gets the tip, gets the pick. I thought that Dana had a couple great moments in this game, left to one-on-one.
Really kind of come on. Like
he's a nice little situational guy. I mean, if it's going to be 3rd and 8 and Chris Jones is getting double teamed, he's somebody that can take advantage of some of those. He got the big holding. That was the 3rd and 7 slant to Chase. He draws the hold, forces a punt, and he had a couple other pass rush moments in this game. I thought overall, I mean, you probably would hope this because the Bengals have 3 backup offensive linemen in. Right. I thought the Chiefs' front affected the game more than Cincinnati's front did. I know that if you look at the box score, like the advanced box score after the game is over, the Bengals got a lot of pressures, but I think that's because Mahomes was hanging on to the ball for a really long time. He was able to hang on to the ball because there weren't a lot of quick wins from the Bengals defensive line in this game. So overall, I thought the KC's offensive line over the course of the entire game played pretty well in this one.
And it was also Andy Reid understanding like, hey, yes, Orlando Brown was our big ticket guy, but they chipped help for him with Hendrickson over and over. Hendrickson, sometimes pass rushers just have one of your tackles or one of your linemen's numbers. Like they just have moves against them. They have counters. Guys like Mitch could probably speak to this where it's like, I just don't have it for him. It's like a pitcher and a batter sometimes. And I think the Chiefs were very intelligent about this. Was how many times you see Jerick McKinnon chip helping. And I think that led to Mahomes be able to sit in the pocket and find those spots. Something I've really have kind of likened football to is a lot of like comparisons to poker. And there's chess and stuff, but poker sometimes, especially in Hold'em, you put yourself in position to win. Sometimes the cards just don't go your way, but it's all about putting yourselves in those positions to win. And yes, sometimes I keep betting 70% or 78%. I'm going to get the cards right here. And you get bad run of cards, cold cards on that. But I think that's Chiefs or having Patrick Mahomes is like always having aces where it's like, yeah, sometimes we lose on this, but we're always going to have a chance. We're always going to have a really good chance going into this game. But that's what, I mean, the Bengals were a really good team this year. And that's why this game was like this game where it felt like, oh, bounce this way or bounce that way. It's 2 really good teams going at it. That's how football breaks down sometimes. It's not fair. It's not fair that sometimes it comes down to a couple ref calls or one guy slipping or a penalty or a guy, or throwing an interception at the worst moment possible. Like that's just kind of how football breaks down, especially with 2 really good teams. But the fact that Mahomes is this is 5 in a row, and this is going to be their 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years. I mean, that's remarkable. The NFL is ridiculously hard to make playoff runs, to win one game in the playoffs. much less going to the AFC Championship game, and much less going to the Super Bowl. It's truly, truly remarkable what they're doing. On top of that, looking back at that the Eagles are going to the championship as well, or to the Super Bowl as well, makes you think of Andy Reid in his Eagles days and how many championship games he made with the Eagles. Like, God, he's just the king of this weekend. So it's really good coaches and really good players, and that's why this game felt that way, where it's just like a couple of the plays going either way and a couple stars making huge plays when it matters.